Hello, everybody. Dave Neal here, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. We have a Hannah Ann podcast to get to. She was on the reality podcast of Page 6, and they asked her some very interesting questions. Wanted to share some of it with you. She actually says she wants to get into the Real Housewife world. Hannah Ann Sluss, a fan of Bravo, and also gives some thoughts on her ex-boyfriend Peter Weber. Of course, she made her fame on Bachelor, and now she's with a professional football player, Jake Funk. They're engaged. She talks about what it's like to live by the seat of your pants with a guy in the NFL who 1 week you're cut and you have to move to a new team, and what's that all like? It's very fascinating. Follow me on Instagram at DNeals, patreon.com/Dave Neal for behind the scenes bonus content. I'll be live at 10:30 a.m. this morning to continue to discuss my court case, of course, being sued for harassment over this here coverage and over this podcast. Oh, what a dangerous podcast. Is it worth listening to? You might get sued, but hey, it's always good to live on the edge. Bachelor Rush Hour, the hit podcast. Okay, let's jump into it. Round it up. Might be our last video of the year. Who knows? I've got lots of clips here. Hannah Ann in the center with these podcast hosts. They do a pretty good job. I don't generally like podcasts that are sort of produced and hosted by news organizations like the Us Weekly ones and all that. But anyway, they do a good job. She's going to discuss what it's like being a WAG, which stands for Wives and Girlfriends. I know you could think it's degrading, but that's the term they use to describe the community that exists of the women who are married to or dating professional athletes. Have a listen.
The problem with you.
Yeah, well, one thing that I didn't know of from my little bit of football knowledge when I started dating Jake is how often these guys move around. I had no idea. Like, you have your superstars, the organizations have spent millions and millions of dollars on you. You're like the face of their franchise. Then you have all the other guys and they're constantly being bounced around. It's very like transactional on like a daily basis. So Jake has been on multiple different teams.
And by that she means, 1 week you might be on the practice squad and then you're picked up to be on the main squad because a guy pulls his groin. If there's 55 active players, probably 40 of them are like mainstays, and then the other ones kind of just come and go. And he's kind of in that bubble where he hasn't really proven himself for long-term contracts, but he is very serviceable because he's a professional athlete.
Which has been really fun and like such a whirlwind, but like a lot of people will take that as something that should be upset. I should like me maybe being upset or disappointed or like, oh, he sucks. And it's just like, it's not like that. Like, this is the nature of the business.
Isn't it funny to say, oh, a professional athlete sucks? No, he gets paid good money to play football, American football, and she's committed to following him because his journey's nomadic right now. But that's great for her. She's a content creator. She's an influencer. She gets to go to all these different towns. It's actually kind of a fun deal if you think about it.
Sure that you love being part of this football world, but it can't always be easy. Like, what would you say is the most challenging part of, dating one of the players who does move around a lot? Like, how do you sort of like cope with that, and how have you become accustomed to this new lifestyle as you figure out how you're going to build a future together?
Right. I will say, being a part of the NFL, it takes two people both being in it, because there's times like, a couple months ago when he was with the Colts, he got a call that he got released and we had to pick up and move within 24 hours. Like, Jake left that night and I was left with our house in Indiana, furniture, clothes. I had to pack it up all myself and be down in Miami. Like, it was like that. Like, I had just gone to the grocery store. I just got stuff from Whole Foods. I was like about to make a TikTok and he's like, hey, I've been released, got picked up by the Dolphins. I got to get to the airport. And I'm like, oh.
And the average football player's career only lasts 4 years. Not everybody's Tom Brady. So many people come in the league and leave. It's a shot in the pan, right? Clayton Echard was on a football team for several weeks. So it's a short life. You can make a lot of money and then you can maybe coach or do anything in broadcasting and all these things afterwards. But, it's like, hey, if you love the person, it sounds like a great experience. All right, so she actually comments on what it's like to be a part of the Taylor Swift mania. As we know, Taylor Swift is also a woman and girlfriend, as she's, of course, a pop icon, but also dating Travis Kelce now. Again, hang tight. We're going to get to the Peter Weber part, and we're going to get to the part where she discusses how she wants to be on Bravo, possibly.
is none other than superstar Taylor Swift. What is your reaction as someone who is part of this NFL Wags club to the Taylor Travis pandemonium that is just sweeping? I'll say the world, not just America.
Oh
Like the
yeah,
world. I
it's
feel like
everywhere.
people in Italy are watching the NFL now because
Oh
of
yeah.
Taylor Swift. So any thoughts, feelings, opinions?
I was so excited. When I first saw it, I was like, this can't be real. Like, this is just the perfect storm.
And of course, Hannah Ann Sluss from Tennessee. Taylor Swift lives in Tennessee. What if Jake Funk gets traded to the Kansas City Chiefs and now Hannah Ann Sluss becomes besties with Taylor Swift? Wouldn't that be fun for Bachelor Nation?
And then when I actually saw the picture of her in the stadium in the box, I just feel like that picture is such an iconic moment in the NFL because that was when, like, oh, it's been confirmed, you know?
And then I could get Hannah Ann Sluss to do Driving with Dave, and she'll be like, hey, Taylor Swift, I've got this buddy who drives around with a GoPro. You should do his show. And she's like, okay. Next thing you know, I'm playing football with Travis Kelce. You see how it all works out, folks.
So I just think it's so cool just to see such two diehard fan bases, you know, the Chiefs, NFL, or even just NFL fans. And then Taylor Swift, like her Swifties, like both coming together. I think it's huge. It's like the biggest thing I think we've seen in pop culture in a long time.
It is huge, and I love following it. I don't know about you guys. I mean, I literally on Bachelor Rush Hour podcast the other day, I reported on Travis Kelce possibly having a hickey. You know what I mean? Like, what's going on out there? All right, let's go to the 21:58 mark, and at this moment, she discusses some reality TV and possibly wanting to go on Real Housewives. I think she would be fantastic.
What was your biggest shock what sort of just like rocked your world in terms of like reality TV news this year?
Oh, I mean, Kyle Richards getting or being separated. I've watched her, you know, over 10 years now. I met her briefly out in LA. I remember after the show, I'll never forget this. She wrote me a very nice handwritten letter, and I had it on my fridge for the 2 years I lived in that apartment.
Wait,
I had it on my fridge.
was she watching you on?
Yeah, it was. Yes, she had watched me, something along those lines. So, yeah, she had watched me. I think gave her, like, she was like, I'll send you some of the clothes or whatever. And she wrote me a handwritten letter, and I had that on my fridge for over 2 years. It just meant.
I mean, you forget how badly Hannah Ann Sluss was treated on the show, as far as, you know, having her heart broken and all that. And boy, it can be lucrative. I'm sure she wouldn't change anything at all right now because, you know, it really catapulted her. Does she have what it takes to be as dramatic as the Real Housewives cast? I'm not sure. Have a listen.
Sort of take that honor and be the one to lead the charge.
Yeah, I definitely would. I'm telling you guys, I am a huge Housewife fan. I watch Andy. Like, I think Andy's awesome. I would love to meet him one day. I think it's more so for like getting my fiance on board. And I feel like that's a lot of the problem with all of these housewives is, you know, the women can feel more confident, but it's like the man having them, you know, kind of get more confident and not confident, but like comfortable in front of the cameras and like having that a part of your life. Cause I do know reality TV, like brings such chaos.
All right, so she says she would do Real Housewives, but she'd have to get her fiance on board. And of course, there's no way Jake Funk is going to want to do Real Housewives while he's trying to make it in the NFL. I mean, that's a full-time job that he's got going on. But very interesting. I mean, let's say, you know, the careers only last forever. Or don't last forever, I should say. And let's say 3-4 years in the NFL, he kind of finally it ends, and maybe she says, hey, we could do Real Housewives of Miami, and then he has to get involved in the drama. I mean, I totally think that would be fun. What do you guys think? Would you watch Hannah Ann Sluss on Bravo? You know, Bravo is interesting. It's like very adjacent to the Bachelor world. It's different, and yet they both have very loyal audiences. I've always said this: if The Bachelor goes away tomorrow, I do a hard pivot to Bravo. I already like to cover Bravo shows. I would just become like a Bravo exclusive, you know, channel because again, it's you know, there's the people in the Bravo bubble, there's the people in the Bachelor bubble, and then there's the folks that kind of intermingle between the two. All right, let's go to our final clip here. This is Hannah Ann discussing Pilot Pete in his new role on the show Traitors season 2.
So the Traitors, how do you think he'll do?
Probably pretty well. I heard that show is really, really popular. I'd never watched it, but I heard on Peacock, I think it was like the number one show on Peacock for a bit. I'm sure, I mean, I don't know like the dynamics of the show, but I mean, I probably pretty good
And
given the title.
Yeah, it's a very fitting
well.
title.
And honestly,
And Tamra's on there too, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think I heard that on her
Right.
podcast.
Oh, and Larsa.
Yeah. Wait, Larsa and Marcus are on it with him and with Tamara, Sheree, and Phaedra. So it's a lot of like Bravo celebrity
I don't know these
energy
names.
there with Peter. I hope he can keep up.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, wow. That's funny. That's really funny. I did not know that.
Well, if you haven't watched that yet on Peacock, have you watched any of the new Roni Ultimate Girls Trip?
Okay, so then they move on. They tried to get her to talk about Peter Weber, and she's like, "Nope, he'll do well." And then, you know, like the Tennessee debutante that she is, she doesn't give us any tea. I don't know. I'll say this: if you're auditioning for Real Housewives, Hannah Ann, you got to be a little bit more dramatic. But also, there's different dynamics for Real Housewives. She could be like the damsel in distress who comes in and they sort of pick on her until she finally snaps, and then, you know, gives it to them back, and she becomes the hero. Who knows? I don't know how it works over there. Just a bunch of people throwing wine at each other. Do I think the Real Housewives franchise has set the feminist movement back about 5 decades? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. But hey, we can have our fun shows and all that. All right. Well, I think that's going to be it for me. I'll be back on the podcast this afternoon with more content, and also on Patreon at patreon.com/Dave Neal. If you don't want to join the Patreon, I understand. It's $5 a month. If you don't want to join, podcast is free. Go check it out. I'm interviewing Pardeep. Remember Pardeep? Was he on Michelle Young's season? I can't even remember. He'll be on tomorrow's episode of Driving with Dave on the Dave Neal Show, and you can listen to that on Bachelor Rush Hour. Have a good weekend, everybody. Happy New Year.